Is this dignity and respect? Look at these people. There's a pandemic. Please give dignity and respect
to the people.
Let me ask you. There's a pandemic.
I respectfully ask you, sir.
There is a pandemic. Is this respecting the rights of these kids?
I ask you. Please
Are you respecting the rights of these kids?
This is not a zoo, sir. Please don't treat the people.
You're right. And this is a dangerous place.
Please don't treat the people
and your
like
policies, unfortunately, are trying to hide them. I understand you were instructed when 18 senators came down here.
Please respect the people, give them dignity and respect.
I respect them, and I want to fix this situation.
We all want to fix it,
Man.
Why isn't the Biden administration taking a more aggressive approach over the border crisis? Let's bring back in our panel. Start with you, Amy. We've got to be respectful to the people. Wouldn't it be respectful not to be putting them into these pens, into these cells, and encouraging them to come here and become essentially, wards of the state and put them into a legal and political limbo?
Yes, of course. And that was really tough to watch. And I feel bad for that woman being put in that position to go up against Senator Cruz, who has been very vocal about the border situation. And he knows how to basically work his way through a process much better than many of us do in a verbal fashion. So she was not a fair match for him. And the fact that they even had to send her there to begin with, they are not being transparent. They know this. The fact that the verbiage that comes out of Press Secretary Psaki's mouth and Kate Bedingfield, the White House communications director, by calling this cyclical, it is to some degree, but not at this large amounts of people. Historically, this is the largest, I think, that we have seen in decades. Cross our borders illegally. This is not acceptable by any means. It's not acceptable for the American citizen who's going to have to foot this bill. It's not acceptable for those migrants who are being misled into thinking that they're going to have a happy ending.
Yeah, Ford, one of the things that President Biden discussed again, and he's mentioned it a couple times now in his one and only news conference, was throwing more money at some of these Central American countries to keep these folks from wanting to come over here in the first place, specifically the Northern Triangle area. But that's something that we have done for a long time. So is throwing more money at the issue, is that really the answer?
Absolutely not. The answer is very simple. Reinstitute the policies that Trump had, which is basically the Remain in Mexico policy, the asylum in Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala, and end, catch, and release. Here's why the Biden administration is hacked off, which, by the way, on the border is the least transparent administration in history, and it's not even close. They're mad not because they're flooding over the border, which will, by the way, ruin jobs, wages, our public school and law enforcement. They're hacked off because illegal immigrants aren't coming fast enough, and they're not doing so in an orderly fashion. They're creating this eyesore. They're just unhappy that they have to they didn't plan for this. Their policies created, and now they're just basically trying to block it out from everybody else in America.
George, to Amy's point earlier about the costs, I think that the Republicans are trying to make the case that this is a humanitarian crisis, that this is inhumane to treat people this way, to bring them over here and essentially have them become wards of the state. Do you think, though, that the Republicans have done a good job of trying to explain to the American people just how much this is going to cost them if we continue, let's say, to have the highest number of illegals come in 20 years and this is not abated? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. I don't think they've done that good a job on that. I think they're trying to pull at the heartstrings of the American people, just like the Democrats did last year. And I think it's more political than analytical and substantive. And I want to harken back to the element of dishonesty here. You heard a lot in the last several years of all the far left shrilly screaming at President Trump for how dishonest or misleading he was. Well, look at the Democrats on the border right now. I mean, they always claim to want to seize the moral high ground. I would argue they're seizing the moral low ground with this. I think they said the other day, I think the president the other day said that he was sending back everybody who came over or something like that. And the actual percentage I saw of people who are being returned at this point is 13%. So there's an awful lot of people flooding the country. And the reality is, and the reason I think the Democrats are being so dishonest is they're an open borders political party at this point. They want all these people to come. They think they're all going to vote Democrat someday when amnesty comes through. And they are all about free stuff. They're constantly offering free stuff and passing the bill on to, quote unquote, the rich and future generations. And the reality is there's not enough money among the top quarter of American society, so to speak, to pay for all this. So it is a really self-destructive piece of public policy. And they don't really care because they think if they get enough of these people in an amnesty and vote for them, they're going to be in power forever.
Yeah, and they want to change the rules. They want to change the rules when it comes to amnesty, Ford. I think you were jumping in there. And so the number of people that can stay would be significantly larger as well.
Well, it's always about politics for the Democrats and moving forward. Yes, they want to convert these people into voters so that they can control the ballot box for the next 100 years. Notice this is very similar to what we were talking about earlier with respect to the filibuster and H.R. 1 and where the Democrats want to go. It's always about, here's the problem, though, and this is what George is right, and this is what Amy discussed, and that is Republicans are not doing a good job because when Democrats say humane, what they really mean is let more people in and the cost be damned. Tell people exactly how it's going to affect them, especially African Americans in this country, when it comes to jobs and wages. That's what you need to explain to people.
And there was a Heritage Foundation study a few years ago during the Obama administration that said that amnesty could cost as much as $6 trillion. Okay, everybody stand by. We're going to have you back in just a little bit. Now